All right.
Internal application and contains other child components. So every React application is essentially a tree of components. If you have worked with Angular 2 or
All
higher, this
right.
should sound familiar. Internal application and contains other child components. So every React application is essentially a tree of components. If you have worked with Angular, here's an example. Let's imagine we want to build an application like Twitter. We can split this page into components like navbar, profile, trends, and feed.
Two or
Here's a
higher.
representation of
Sound
these
familiar.
components in a tree. So on the top we have app, and below that we have navbar, profile, trend, and feed. Now feed includes several tweet components. Each tweet component can include a like component, which we can reuse on other pages or even in different applications. So as you see, each component is a piece of UI. We can build these components in isolation and then put them together to build complex UIs. In terms of implementation, a component is typically implemented as a JavaScript class that has some state and a render method. The state here is the data that we want to display when the component is rendered. And the render method, as you can tell, is responsible for describing what the UI should look like. The output of this render method is a React element, which is a simple, plain JavaScript object that maps to a DOM element. It's not a real DOM element, it's just a plain JavaScript object that represents that DOM element in memory. So React keeps a lightweight representation of the DOM in memory, which we refer to as the virtual DOM. Unlike the browser or the real DOM, this virtual DOM is cheap to create. When we change the state of a component, we get a new React element. React will then compare this element and its children with the previous one. It figures out what is changed, and then it will update a part of the real DOM to keep it in sync with the virtual DOM. So that means when building applications with React, unlike vanilla JavaScript or jQuery, we no longer have to work with the DOM API in browsers. In other words, we no longer have to write code to query and manipulate the DOM or attach event handlers to DOM elements. We simply change the state of our components and React will automatically update the DOM to match that state. And that's exactly why this library is called React. Because when the state changes, React essentially reacts to the state change and updates the DOM. One of the questions that I often get is React or Angular? Well, both React and Angular are similar in terms of their component-based architecture. However, Angular is a framework or a complete solution, while React is a library. It only takes care of rendering the view and making sure that the view is in sync with the state. That's all React does, nothing less, nothing more. For this very reason, React has a very small API to learn. So when building applications with React, we need to use other libraries for things like routing or calling HTTP services and so on. But this is not necessarily a bad thing because you get to choose the libraries that you prefer as opposed to being fixed with what Angular gives you, which often breaks from one version to another. So that's all about React. Next, we're going to set up our development environment. Alright, this is where the fun begins. The first thing I want you to install is Node.js. Now, in this course, we're not going to use Node. We're only going to use one of its built-in tools, Node Package Manager or NPM, to install third-party libraries. So if you don't have Node on your machine, head over to nodejs.org and download and install the latest stable version. Once you do that, open up the terminal on Mac or command prompt on Windows and run this command. npm I, which is short for install, -g, which is short for global. And here's the package we're going to install. create-react-app. We're going to use this package to create a new React app. Now, I want you to install the exact same version I'm going to use in this course, because in the future, there might be breaking changes and you might get frustrated if what you see is different from what I'm going to show you. So here, version 1.5.2. Now, if you're on Mac and you haven't configured permissions properly, you need to put sudo in the front of this command. So, sudo. With this, we'll run this command under administrative privileges. Let's enter the password. Okay, beautiful. Now, the next thing you need is a code editor. The code editor I'm going to use in this course is Visual Studio Code or VS Code. Chances are you use the same because it's a beautiful, lightweight, and cross-platform editor. If you don't have it, you can download it from code.visualstudio.com. So here's VS Code. We're going to install two extensions that make it easier to build React applications in VS Code. So open up the extensions panel on the left and search for Simple React Snippets. Here's the extension I'm talking about. It's developed by Berk Holland, and currently there are more than 40,000 downloads. Very, very popular extension. So install it, and then you will have to reload VS Code. The other extension we're going to install is Prettier. So search for Prettier Code Formatter. This one is developed by Espen Petersen, and currently there are more than 2.7 million downloads. We use this extension to reformat our code. Now, one thing I highly encourage you to do so is to enable formatting on save. So whenever you save the changes, this extension will automatically reformat your code. To do that, you need to go to the settings page. Now here I'm on Mac. I'm not entirely sure how to do this on Windows, but that should be pretty straightforward. So here on Mac, we go to the code menu on the top, then preferences, and finally settings. So here on the right side, under user settings, I want you to add this setting. Editor.format unsave, set this to true. And finally, let me show you what theme I'm using here, because that's a question I get quite a lot. So on the top, go to the code menu, preferences, color theme. This is the theme I'm using. So IU or AU Mirage. So I leave it up to you to download and install this if you want to. Next, we're going to create our first React app. Now let's use the Create React App package to create a new React application. So here in the terminal, let's run Create React App and give our new application a name. Let's call it React App. Now this is going to install React as well as all the third-party libraries we need. So it's going to install a lightweight development server, Webpack for bundling our files, Babel or Babel for compiling our JavaScript code, as well as a bunch of other tools. So when you create an application using Create React App, you don't have to do any configuration. All the configuration is done for you. However, if you want to customize this configuration for your production environment, you can always eject by running npm run eject. We'll look at this later in the future. So now we have a fully working React app. Let's go to this new folder, React app, and run npm start. So this will launch our development server on port 3000 and open up Chrome or our default browser pointing to localhost port 3000. Now let's go back to VS Code and see what we have in this folder. So here we have 3 folders, Node modules, which is where we have all the third-party libraries as well as React itself. We never have to touch this, so let's not worry about it. We've got this public folder where we have the public assets of our application, such as a favorite icon and index.html. Now, if you look at this file, this is a very simple template. It doesn't really have anything. So a bunch of meta tags in the head section, as well as links to our manifest.json file and favorite icon. Manifest.json includes a bunch of metadata attributes about our application. Again, we don't have to worry about this, but if you look further below, here in the body section, you can see a single div with the ID root. This is where our React application is going to appear. So this div is the container for our React application, as you will see shortly. Now back to our files panel. We've got the source folder where we have a basic component that is app component. And that component is responsible for rendering this black banner on the top. So the output of that component is what you see here. Let's have a quick look at app.js. So you can see here we are using ES6 classes. We have a class called app that extends component, which is one of the built-in classes in React. Now, as you can tell, as a React developer, you need to understand what classes are and how to use them. If you're not familiar with these classes, I have a comprehensive course called Object-Oriented Programming in JavaScript. There, I cover classes in full detail. But to help you get started quickly, in the next section, I'm going to give you a quick overview of all the modern JavaScript features that you're going to use frequently in React applications. So if you're not familiar with classes or modules, don't worry for now. We're going to get to them shortly. Now look at this class. Here we have a render method or a render function where we return a markup like this. Now, this is something you probably haven't seen before because we cannot have markup like this in JavaScript. Note that this is neither a string nor HTML. This is what we call JSX, which stands for JavaScript XML. So we use this syntax, which looks very familiar to us, to describe what the UI is going to look like. So this markup represents this black banner on the top. This is the output of our app component. Now, to make this code work, we have to pass this code through Babel, which is a modern JavaScript compiler. So Babel will take this JSX syntax and convert it to plain JavaScript code that browsers can understand. Let me give you a quick demo. Head over to babeljs.io/REPL or REPL. Here we can type modern JavaScript code, and Babel will convert that code into